kids may not. The thing is still going. It is slowing down, but it's still going. And probably once this boat started to sink and stuff, Jesus said, "Okay, fish, you can swim away now. You don't have to keep filling up our thing." But I had a little lesson this week. Shh, I need you guys to be quiet. The kids may or may not understand this, but hey, will you go get me that pot? See the teapot sitting up there?
Me?
One of you. Or just sit here and stare at me.
Okay,
I like
fine,
that too.
fine. I'll go get it. If you can get it.
So, last Saturday, since we were stuck at home, I asked Jamie to do some repotting of our indoor plants because they were looking pretty sad. It had been lots of years since we had done it, and you could just tell that the soil was not giving them what they needed, and they needed to be repotted. Be careful with it. So I had this little plant, and my family will know exactly where this was from. There was a little, I think it's a Schefflera. No, I don't know. One of those plants that you can't hardly kill. It was, yes, I'll show it to you in a minute. It was in this little pot, and it had been for like as long as I've been alive, because this pot sat at my almost 40, sat at my grandma's house for all of my growing up years with this plant in it. And of course, in the beginning, it was much
smaller.
No, it was much bigger and healthier. And then she never took it out of this pot. Well, when she moved several years ago, I couldn't stand for this little plant to get thrown away. I'm sentimental. It had been there all my life. I just couldn't handle it. So we brought it to our house, and we've been watering it ever since Grandma moved out of her house. So last week, when I asked Jamie to repot everything, he of course took the little teapot with the 2 sprigs that were left in this of plant and took it out. And he got started before I could get out there. And I walk out, and he has this teapot empty. Empty, and the plant taken out and repotted. And I went maybe a little berserko. I told him to put it back in that pot. He was not allowed to move it out of that pot. That I just couldn't handle the change of that. Like, it had always been in that pot. It needed to stay in that pot, and I didn't care what it looked like. It had lived for almost 40 years in that pot. Why couldn't it stay in that pot? And he said, "Well, honey, it was in a little cup, and I have washed this thing, and it is not getting clean. It was in this little plastic cup in here, but this has no hole. It is not a planter to let the water go out. And if he would have repotted it back in this pot, it would have just gotten root rot and probably died. A plant that you can't kill, it probably would have died." And so after about 15 minutes of me ranting and raving about him needing to put it back in that pot, I finally calmed down and got my senses about me. And I said, "Okay, just leave it. I still wasn't happy about it, but whatever, just leave it."
Are you going to show them?
Yes, I'm going to show them, honey.
Is that the point?
Yes. So, I'm saying all this to say that we're in a time of change, and a lot of us aren't liking it, not even just a little bit. I mean, I do like that I have more time with my family and I'm not running all over. On the other hand, I'm not used to being stuck at home. And so I have been struggling a lot. And this plant taught me a little bit because it was not healthy in that pot. It was still growing. I mean, if I watered it, it still stayed alive. But it was not healthy at all. And even though it's only been a week since we did this, I will show you. Here is the plant, and its leaves that are on it, they're healthy. And I have no doubt that if I came back to you in a month or two, that this will be growing and full and thriving and just a much healthier plant. Did I like the change? No. Did I want the change? No. Am I still struggling with the fact that my plant is not in my teapot that it had been in all my life? Yes, because I'm sentimental like that. But I know that this plant will thrive and it will grow and it will be full, having been repotted and in this new soil. So with this time of, you guys,
These ones don't even look healthy.
with this time of change, I would ask you, are you bucking the system and not wanting the change simply because where you were was comfortable, it's what you knew and what had always been? I would say to you, use this time not just to stay healthy. We want a healthy plant, but not just to stay healthy physically, but to be healthy spiritually. That when we come out on the other side of this virus thing, that we have all grown so much in God that the people outside of us, just like this plant, will be able to see our growth and see that we're more healthy and be able to just see the change in us just from the fact that we've had all this time to spend in our Bibles and prayer. And when you keep thinking, oh, I'm just so bored, use that time to pray and see where God wants you to change and grow. I know this week we've had lots of fights in this house and lots of challenges in this house. And so I had to do a lot of thinking about this stuff. And my prayer for you guys is that you embrace this change. And while it's not easy, change is never easy, whether it's for the good or the bad. I just ask that you would embrace it, and that when we come out and all get to meet together again, that we can see the growth in each other, just like my plant. And now, if you are West Hayesville Baptist Churcher people, I would encourage you. We will go live in a little less than 15 minutes on our Facebook page to hear what Pastor Dave has to tell us this morning. And again, I encourage you to do this with your children so that they can see you worshiping God and putting Him first. You guys, our bottle has quit growing. It finally stopped, but as you can see, my sheet pan, good thing I used the big one, is pretty full. So I can imagine that those fishermen, no, you may not touch it. You can clean all the dishes later with it.
No.
But I can imagine that those fishermen were overwhelmed, and let us be overwhelmed by what Jesus can do.